Though 14-year-old Ben Underwood is a freshman like all the rest. Well, not exactly. In his first week, at Sheldon High in
sarà preceduto da una breve contestualizzazione del PhD Summer School all'interno del festival, molto breve insomma, però ce n'è bisogno perché ogni incontro sarà un video a sé, ogni video, ogni incontro. Io ovviamente mi metto nel feedback delle casse. Interferisco con la con la testa, no? Dunque, la mia posizione, secondo me, è qui. No, almeno inizialmente. Direttamente, poi esco da lì. Ok. Siamo pronti? Ok, si parte, lo streaming è avviato. Bentrovati a tutti i presenti all'interno di questo splendido spazio che è il Teatro di Lari, in provincia di Pisa, e a tutti quelli che si sono collegati per diciamo, fruire di questo streaming veramente speciale. Siamo all'interno della PhD Summer School, che ha come tema percezione del suono attraverso i sensi e i sensori biologici, quindi percezione non solo dei sensi che noi conosciamo, ma anche di tutto il nostro corpo, come di percezione. E questa PhD Summer School sta all'interno della 27esima edizione del Collinarea Festival, che coinvolge Lari, Cascina Termini Lare e Parco Fluviale La Rotta di Pontedera, ed è un festival di cui sono direttori Loris Seghizzi e Mirko Mencaci, che è qui presente per la sezione Suono. Il festival infatti ha 3 sezioni fondamentali. La prima riguarda le arti performative, musica, danza e teatro. La seconda è connessioni, perché questo borgo è meravigliosamente cablato in fibra e permette di fare questa esperienza di teatro ubiquo all'interno del borgo. E l'ultima sezione, non ultima per noi ovviamente, è quella del suono, che prevede quest'anno 3 momenti particolarmente significativi in ottica interdisciplinare, multidisciplinare, immersiva, e poi ne parleremo, che sono la navicella sonora, che è un'installazione di audio immersivo, la Atmos Jukebox all'interno del SAM Lari Studio Recording, che ovviamente è la possibilità di ascoltare musica in Atmos, quindi in audio immersivo. E qui siamo alla PhD Summer School, che è ovviamente una summer school, diciamo un momento di formazione intensiva, 3 giorni direi proprio, Mirko l'ha chiamata proprio giorni del suono, come dire, dove si fanno approfondimenti sugli aspetti che Mirko Mencacci prima fuori onda anticipava, che sono suono, rumore e vibrazione, in ottica multidisciplinare. Sono aspetti uditivi, cioè in relazione a tutti i sensi, come il titolo recitava prima. Questa Summer School è organizzata, intanto prevede la partecipazione di studenti che voi non vedete in streaming, ma sono numerosi, provenienti da varie diciamo università e istituti di formazione italiana e anche estera. E questa Summer School è organizzata in collaborazione appunto con varie università e istituti di ricerca, in particolare con il contributo specifico di Head Acoustics e del Dipartimento Energia del Politecnico di Torino. Questa collaborazione porta a questa particolare qualità degli interventi a cui voi potrete accedere, che sono i ricercatori e gli scienziati di livello internazionale anch'essi, che porteranno i loro contenuti nell'ottica del titolo che avevamo detto prima. La PhD Summer School è aperta al pubblico, quindi perché l'idea è quella di creare divulgazione scientifica a un pubblico il più ampio possibile. Gli interventi quindi non saranno, cioè saranno ovviamente pertinenti dal punto di vista scientifico, molto ben come dire, caratterizzati, ma cercheranno di essere molto divulgativi per un pubblico un po' più aperto dei ricercatori che parlano un linguaggio molto specifico, almeno me lo auguro io che sono giornalista e quindi mi aspetto questo. Per questa Summer School noi ci aspettiamo che anche voi ragazzi presenti all'interno, chiamo ragazzi perché ovviamente sono più giovani di me, all'interno del campus della Summer School ci aspettiamo un'interazione, quindi gli stessi relatori non faranno interventi di tipo frontale tipico, ma questa Summer School ha questa caratteristica che è veramente interattiva, come lo è stato fino a stamattina tra gli stessi partecipanti a questa tavola rotonda, che hanno già anticipato una serie di argomenti che voi ascolterete oggi e domani, perché la Summer School si svolge oggi e domani, e con un'ultima tavola rotonda nella giornata di domenica mattina, aperta anche quella al pubblico, in cui si tireranno un po' le somme di questo incontro. Sono 15 incontri suddivisi in questi 2 giorni. Io ho finito la presentazione, spero di essere stato veloce e esaustivo. Se c'è qualcosa da aggiungere, gli organizzatori lo possono fare, perché ovviamente io sono un loro tramite. A questo punto, se non c'è nient'altro da dire, io comincerei con il primo incontro. Massimiliano Zampini dell'Università di Trento, percepire il mondo attraverso i sensi, una prospettiva multisensoriale. Prego.
Grazie Piero. Grazie Piero. Allora, funziona tutto, potete sentirmi anche sullo streaming, benissimo. Quindi la mia presentazione riguarderà appunto l'interazione tra i sensi. So my presentation concerns multisensory interaction among the senses. So I'm going to speak both in Italian and English for obvious reason. And I'll start with the first question. How many senses do we have? Quanti sensi abbiamo? So this is the first question for you. Please try to, don't be shy, non siate timidi. Quanti sensi abbiamo? How many senses? 5. Okay, the sixth sense can be considered intuition. Well, okay. What can we perceive with this sixth sense? How many receptors do we have for the sense of intuition?
I think it's your gut feeling.
Ok. Quindi di solito la risposta è 5 sensi. The famous 5 senses. But if we consider our evolution, we started like that, from a quadrupedalism to bipedalism. So nell'evoluzione noi abbiamo iniziato a camminavamo, ci muovevamo su 4 zampe, diciamo, e poi dopo abbiamo iniziato a muoverci stando in una posizione retta. So when we start to, let's say, stay in a position that needs a bit of equilibrium, our brain needs a further sense. Quindi quando abbiamo iniziato ad assumere questa posizione, il nostro sistema, il nostro cervello ha avuto la necessità di avere un altro senso, e perché altrimenti in queste condizioni, cercando di far fronte alla forza di gravità, noi ci saremmo spesso trovati a cadere. Sometimes when you have to face the gravitational forces, you have to keep the equilibrium. And for keeping the equilibrium, you need the vestibular sense. So we have 5 senses plus another one, the vestibular sense. Il senso vestibolare sta molto vicino a quello che è il nostro senso uditivo. Il sistema vestibolare sta vicino alla coclea. The vestibular sense is really close to the cochlear system and to the first path of the auditory system. So we have a specific organs, otoliths organs, and semicircular canals that provide us with the necessary information for keeping this equilibrium for still and for also integrate the visual information with the head movements. Quindi una cosa importante di questo senso vestibolare non è solo il fatto che ci permetta di mantenere l'equilibrio, ma anche di coordinare le informazioni che ci sono tra movimenti oculari e movimenti della testa. Questo diciamo, sistema funziona sulla base, per esempio, di piccoli diciamo, minerali, piccoli sassolini, gli ottoliti, che si spostano con lo spostamento della testa. Questo spostamento può creare anche dei fenomeni illusori. Per esempio, quando iniziamo a ruotare e ruotiamo su noi stessi, è un gioco che facevamo quando eravamo bambini, si ruotava su noi stessi, a un certo punto ci potevano chiedere, ecco, fermati. Ecco, in quel momento, quando ci viene chiesto di fermarsi, la nostra impressione è che stiamo ancora girando. So the vestibular sense, the otolith organs, and they are small minerals that can move in the system, and when you ask yourself to turn around for a while and they ask you to stop, you still have the perception that you are rotating, because these otolith organs are still going and produce this sensory the vestibular illusion. If you have a party and you start to drink some alcohol, and you start to drink more alcohol, the day after you start to have this feeling that everything is rotating. The reason why is because the alcohol produces a sort of change in the composition of the liquid in which these otolith organs are immersed, and so they move easily even if there is no real movement. Quindi se avete festeggiato ieri sera, avete bevuto eccessivamente dell'alcol, ecco, questo può aver creato un effetto che è quello di sentire la testa girare. Perché? Perché la composizione del liquido in cui sono immersi questi otoliti cambia e gli otoliti si muovono più velocemente. Però, come vi dicevo prima, la interazione tra il senso vestibolare, cioè l'informazione che ci produce il senso vestibolare è molto importante non solo per il senso dell'equilibrio, per sentire la testa ruotare, ma perché ci permette di coordinare il movimento degli occhi con il movimento della testa. Questo produce il vestibular ocular reflex. So when we are fixating something and we suddenly turn our head, we can still keep the fixation on that point, because there is a sort of coordination between the vestibular sense and the eye movement. But in some patients, when the vestibular sense doesn't work properly, you have the effect that when you turn the head, the eyes turn with the head. And so you don't keep the fixation like here, because there is a deficit in the vestibular system. And so you need to move again the eye, to force to move the eye towards the fixation point. Otherwise, this system is somewhat automatic. Quindi questa diciamo, interazione tra il senso vestibolare fornisce anche quindi un'informazione che si coordina con il movimento oculare, e quando fissiamo un oggetto, un qualsiasi oggetto, noi manteniamo la fissazione anche quando la testa si muove. Questo coordinamento è qualcosa di automatico, che però in alcuni pazienti è un meccanismo che può non funzionare in maniera appropriata, anzi proprio non funziona. Quindi muoviamo la testa, gli occhi si muovono con la testa e dobbiamo in maniera diciamo forzata, dobbiamo forzare il movimento degli occhi verso l'oggetto. Ecco, another question for you. What are the advantages of having so many different senses, in your opinion? Quali sono i vantaggi di avere così tante modalità sensoriali? Yeah. Okay, in the case of sensory deprivation, we have other possible senses that can substitute the missing sense. Quindi quando manca una modalità sensoriale, le altre modalità possono arrivare in aiuto della perdita. Other possible, yes, please? You have a lot of channel for training the senses. So for the training, if you have more senses, you can train both each single sense, but also maybe the interaction among the senses. Quindi se abbiamo più sensi può facilitare l'allenamento. Other reasons? Okay, so the point is we have different object of our perception, and not all the senses have the same sensitivity to those objects. So it's also a matter of different capability of processing the different information. Quindi anche questo è un elemento importante. La diversa sensibilità ha diverse caratteristiche fisiche degli stimoli. Other possible reasons of having so many senses?
Is there a ranking of importance of the senses? So it is not a precise question because it depends on the.
A precise question is a possible spoiler for the you are going to anticipate, but it's important. So c'è una classifica di importanza dei sensi, ma di questo in realtà ne parleremo anche domenica, vero Mirko, a proposito del ruolo per esempio dell'udito e della sua importanza. In realtà non c'è ma la risposta è ci sono diverse classifiche a seconda delle condizioni che consideriamo. So there are different rankings as a function of the contest in which you are looking for possible, for instance, dominance or importance of the senses. So the flexibility, as you said, but also there is another reason for having such a number of senses. We can use them for a better definition of external world. We are faster in responding when we use more than one sense altogether. So c'è il vantaggio è quello, come abbiamo già detto, della deprivazione sensoriale, l'altro vantaggio è quello quando nel definire la realtà che ci circonda. È molto più veloce se usiamo più sensi contemporaneamente. A proposito di
sound, different voices. Nobody is going to tell him that there is an impossibility for him because there are none.
That doesn't give you any breaks because you're blind, does she?
Nah. Why should he get a break? I can't get a break.
His mother, Aquanetta Gordon, insists he should have every opportunity, but no pity. But he's blind.
No, he's not. I mean, you know, to society, he's blind, but that doesn't make him handicapped. He just can't see.
Ben has much the same talent as the dolphins he visited at SeaWorld, the ability to use echolocation, returning sound waves, to sense his surroundings. His clicks even told him to step around a fallen trash bin.
I don't know how you do that.
But the secret to Ben's success goes beyond his clicks. Aquanetta has always told Ben he can do anything.
Once he said to me, he says, Mom, man, I wish I could see. And then I said, well, Ben, but look what you can do. I said, if we had a blackout right now, everybody have to follow you.
Before I introduce you to Ben, we need you to please hold your applause so he can use his clicking to walk out. Please come on out, Ben, without any applause, and his mother, Aqua, with him. Hey, Ben, it's Oprah. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
Welcome to the show. Hi, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Nice to see you. There you go, right there. Have a seat. Hello, Aqua. Nice to see you too. Welcome, Ben Underwood. You can applaud now.
Ecco, abbiamo visto come Ben Underwood usa il senso dell'udito per riconoscere tutti gli oggetti che il mondo esterno, producendo tramite l'ecolocalizzazione, producendo un click con la lingua, ma la cosa sorprendente è che lui riesce a riconoscere qual è diciamo, la risposta dell'eco rispetto agli oggetti, ed è una cosa che lui ha imparato ad acquisire. Ha imparato ad acquisire perché con l'allenamento si possono affinare i sensi, l'apprendimento percettivo sappiamo che funziona, sappiamo anche che si può arrivare a un livello tale da poter riconoscere l'eco dei suoni. Diciamo che questo è un aspetto che riguarda sia una certa plasticità del nostro sistema cerebrale, del nostro cervello, ma anche il fatto, nel caso specifico di Ben, che suo malgrado manca delle informazioni visive che però gli permette di concentrarsi sull'informazione uditiva. So sometimes when you're sensory deprived, you are in a situation that you need to use the other senses, but in this specific case, the visual information can be a sort of obstacle, and so without the visual information, you can really focus on the auditory information. So if you are curious to know how the cognitive neuroscientists study perception, I'll show you how perception is presented in different books. Usually, you see that they speak about visual information, auditory information. Sometimes there is a sort of mention of the chemical senses, but as you can see here, they are all reported in separate chapters. So there is not really a multisensory perspective, or at least this multisensory perspective start really in a massive way at the end of the 80s of the last century. So la prospettiva in cui viene studiata la percezione è una prospettiva per lo più unisensoriale, si studiano i sensi separatamente. È solo diciamo alla fine del secolo scorso, negli anni 80 del Novecento, che c'è stato un diciamo rinnovato interesse sull'interazione multisensoriale, altrimenti l'attenzione era focalizzata sulle singole modalità sensoriali. Ma c'è una ragione per studiare i sensi in maniera unisensoriale. What are the reasons for this modality independent approach, in your opinion? Yes, please.
It is simply difficult. It is simply difficult to test multiple sensory channels at the same time.
Ok, it's simply difficult, cioè è un problema di difficoltà nello studiare contemporaneamente più modalità sensoriali. Poi, other...
I think also that happened because every person has different way to, different relationship with their senses. So, for example, if you're more sensitive to the sound, you will focus more your study on sound. But if you're more sensible to the light, you will focus your study into the vision.
So there might be a sort of preference
Yes.
among the senses, inter-individual preference. Quindi
Yes.
ci possono essere delle preferenze individuali, chi preferisce la modalità uditiva, chi preferisce la modalità visiva, e quindi questo può essere una ragione per focalizzarsi sulle singole modalità. Altre ragioni? Other reasons?
magari perché per capire come si integrano fra di loro è utile prima sapere come ciascuna funziona
So
singolarmente.
for understanding the multisensory interaction, first of all, you need to understand how each sense, the processing of each sensory modality independently. So the autonomous, how they work autonomously, so independent from each other. Okay. So there are other reasons, though. Perception of colors. Can you think about a way to perceive color through auditory or tactile or visual information? There might be some sort of ways, but I guess what is the truly perception of color is just a visual perception. You can translate in the other modality, but usually you can translate in metaphorical terms. You can say that this color is warm color. Okay, this other is cold, but you don't feel the thermal sensation when you are presented with a red or a blue color. So diciamo, l'esperienza del colore è un'esperienza tipicamente visiva, non è un'esperienza che si può facilmente tradurre attraverso le altre modalità sensoriali. Possiamo dire che un colore è caldo e un colore è freddo, ma non sentiamo realmente la sensazione del caldo e il freddo se ci viene presentato un colore rosso o un colore blu. Ci sono anche altre differenze, la questione legata alle differenze fisiche tra gli stimoli. So this is another reason. Another reason is different sensory pathways. Quando nel nostro cervello le informazioni vengono elaborate da differenti aree cerebrali. Questa è una visione però che è stata fortemente messa in dubbio, o perlomeno la visione originale era: ci sono aree del cervello che elaborano le informazioni uditive, altre aree del cervello che elaborano le informazioni visive e fanno solo questo. So there was really a strong view in new science in which we tended to separate different brain areas as a function of the sensory modality. We have a visual area, we have an auditory area, and they are just devoted to process those kind of information. At the end, it's not completely true. For instance, we have discovered that in the blind individuals, when you present auditory information, there is an activation also of the visual cortex. The visual cortex was supposed just to elaborate visual information. Quindi, come dicevo, non è completamente vera quella visione, quella forte visione che ci siano aree visive che elaborano solamente le informazioni visive. È stato dimostrato, per esempio, che quelle aree nel cervello di persone cieche si attivano anche quando vengono presentati stimoli uditivi, quindi non si possono definire unicamente aree visive. Poi c'è una diversa organizzazione a livello cerebrale. Per esempio, la corteccia uditiva viene organizzata in base alle frequenze degli stimoli sonori. Per cui in una determinata area della corteccia visiva si elaborano informazioni a una certa frequenza, 500 Hz per esempio, fino ad arrivare alle frequenze più alte e percepibili dall'orecchio umano. E invece la corteccia chiamata somatosensoriale, che è quella che elabora tutte le informazioni relative al nostro corpo, è organizzata in una maniera molto particolare, nel senso che si rappresenta tutte le aree del nostro corpo, ma come vedete la rappresentazione è un po' anomala, è un po' sbilanciata. Ci sono aree del nostro corpo che sono maggiormente rappresentate, il volto per esempio, o le mani, tanto da creare quello che viene chiamato homunculus somatosensoriale. Se la nostra rappresentazione corporea fosse basata solo su questa organizzazione, noi dovremmo percepire il nostro corpo con una testa enorme, delle grosse mani e un corpo molto piccolo. Così non è, perché anche la rappresentazione corporea deriva da informazioni multisensoriali. So, what I was trying to say is that in the different auditory in the different sensory cortices. In the auditory cortex, we organize the information in a tonotopic way, through the different frequencies. Instead, in the somatosensory cortex, we organize them in a somatotopic way, according to the different body parts. But there is a sort of imbalance in this representation. In fact, if you see the head, the face is overrepresented, and also the hands. This creates a representation, a body representation that is not really like the actual body. If we, let's say, trust this representation, we should fill our body as with a big, really big head, huge hand, and a small body. Instead, we have a proper representation of our body, because also the body representation is a multisensory one. We use visual information together with other kind of information, vestibular, proprioceptive information, tactile, and even auditory information for representing the body. So, what are the reasons for studying multisensory perception? Well, the main reason is that our world is multisensory. La ragione per adottare un approccio multisensoriale è che il mondo è multisensoriale. Can you try to find an experience in which you can use just one sense? Potete pensare ad un esempio di una situazione in cui usate solo una modalità sensoriale? Sorry?
When we are sleeping.
When you are sleeping? Well, which kind of, well, when you are sleeping, there are two aspects. The first one is the level of awareness that you have when you are sleeping. And the second one is that maybe our brain is using both the information that we referred to at the beginning, vestibular information. It can use also even the auditory information. We can really process also this possible smell. In fact, it has been demonstrated that for deaf people with deafness, given that they cannot use the fire alarm by sounds, in Japan they have used smells for informing people when they are sleeping that there is something bad going on, and it works apparently quite well. Quindi anche quando stiamo dormendo, in realtà stiamo elaborando varie informazioni. Per esempio, in Giappone, per persone che sono sorde e quindi non si possono usare un sistema d'allarme che possa utilizzare il suono per svegliare queste persone e dire attenzione, c'è un pericolo, ci sono delle fiamme, si usano, hanno brevettato, utilizzato un sistema che usi diciamo gli odori, in particolare il wasabi in quel caso, che ha una particolare, produce una particolare sensazione pungente e quello funziona. Quindi probabilmente abbiamo più sensi anche quando stiamo dormendo. Poi c'è un tema legato a quanto siamo consapevoli di quelle informazioni quando stiamo dormendo, e questo è ovviamente un altro aspetto. Other possible experience, unisensory experiences?
When you listen, it doesn't work. Yes, it works. When you listen to music with headphones and you still...
Yeah, when you listen to music with headphones...
And you close your eyes, sorry.
You can close your eyes, but you have your headphones touching your head. So you have already a tactile experience, and you can perceive it. Plus, it depends where you are, because if you are standing, you are using your vestibular system for keeping the equilibrium. If you are sitting down, you use information that the sitting is, and those information, imagine that you are sitting there for 2 hours. After a while, it can be a disturbing information, that one, and can affect your attention toward the music. and even other environmental information. Imagine that there is a good or bad smell in that moment. You are influenced also by those information. So I think there are really no unisensory experiences in the real world. They are most of them, I would say 99% of them are really multisensory. 1% just for maybe keeping the possibility, but I'm pretty sure that we are 100% multisensory. For instance, when we are in a noisy situation and we want to hear what the other person is saying, if we used to wear glasses and in that moment we don't have glasses, it's more difficult for us to understand what the other people is telling us. Suddenly, when you start wearing the glasses, immediately we improve our auditory process. Quindi quando stiamo coinvolti in una conversazione, siamo coinvolti in una conversazione e sostanzialmente c'è del rumore, facciamo fatica a capire quello che l'altra persona ci sta dicendo, ecco che non appena indossiamo, se siamo abituati, se dobbiamo utilizzare gli occhiali, non appena li indossiamo migliora anche la nostra capacità di comprendere quello che l'altra persona sta dicendo. Yes, please.
Chiedo scusa, in questo tipo di studio, mettendosi gli occhiali, si stava guardando il volto dell'altra persona parlare, oppure, come dire, è considerato magari una capacità più affinata dopo di riuscire a leggere il movimento delle labbra e quindi fare una corrispondenza tra suono e labbra, oppure semplicemente un'acuità maggiore visiva?
La questione è proprio quella. Nel momento in cui riusciamo a interpretare questi indizi visivi, che sono per esempio il movimento delle labbra, che nella quasi totalità delle condizioni è congruente con il suono che viene prodotto, questo aiuta, facilita la nostra elaborazione. Si è visto anche a livello cerebrale che, per esempio, quando vado a vedere l'attività a livello di corteccia uditiva, questa attività è amplificata dal fatto di utilizzare anche informazioni visive, per esempio quello del volto della persona che sta parlando. Se presento solo il suono, c'è un'attivazione a livello cerebrale. Se presento anche il volto della persona che sta parlando, questa attivazione aumenta notevolmente. Okay? Quindi questo è un aspetto molto, molto importante della nostra capacità di interpretare, di collegare assieme le informazioni. There is also a multisensory facilitation. This multisensory facilitation is known really from the beginning of the last centuries. One of the first experiments was conducted by Todd in 1912. He asked people just, please press a button when you either see a light or when you hear a sound, or when you hear a sound and see a light together. So they can be a unisensory presentation or a multisensory presentation. Ci poteva essere in questo esperimento del 1912, ci poteva essere una singola presentazione di stimoli oppure una doppia presentazione, stimoli audiovisivi. Ecco, quello che si è visto è che la seconda condizione è sempre più veloce. Questo tipo di compiti ci ha permesso di stabilire anche che cosa? Vedere che c'è un effetto chiamato redundant target effect o redundant signal effect. This redundant signal effect is exactly what I have shown before. Bimodal presentation is always better than unimodal presentation. There can be two possible explanations. So the first explanation is called race models. Is a sort of statistical facilitation. You have two possible information, and it's more likely that at least one of the two reach your brain in a faster way and it can respond better and more faster than when a single presentation, when a single stimulus is presented. There is also, however, a coactivation model. This coactivation model say that there is something more than just a statistical facilitation. the fact that you integrate two stimuli together, and you get, from this integration, you can get a faster response. Ci sono quindi risultati mostrati prima, quelli della presentazione di doppi stimoli o di singoli stimoli. Ci possono essere due spiegazioni. Una spiegazione di che richiama in causa una facilitazione statistica. Se tu presenti due stimoli, è più probabile che almeno uno dei due arrivi prima alla tua consapevolezza e tu riesca a rispondere prima. Tuttavia c'è anche una presentazione o interpretazione che chiama in causa modelli di coattivazione, così come vengono chiamati, e in particolare si riferisce al fatto che ci sia un effetto legato all'integrazione multisensoriale tra i due sensi, e questa integrazione produce un effetto di facilitazione che va oltre la semplice facilitazione statistica. Diciamo che questi modelli possono essere messi a confronto, si fanno dei calcoli, si vede se la semplice facilitazione statistica può spiegare il risultato o c'è qualcosa di più. E sostanzialmente molte volte si vede che c'è qualcosa di più, è la integrazione tra le informazioni che funziona. Qual è il problema quando si studia la integrazione multisensoriale? Uno dei problemi è che molto spesso le informazioni sono ridondanti, cioè forniscono esattamente lo stesso tipo di informazione. Se io prendo in mano una mela, la guardo e vedo che ha una determinata forma, la sento questa forma, le informazioni sono ridondanti. Come faccio a capire il ruolo di ciascuna modalità sensoriale? Quale impatto possa avere? When it comes to multisensory integration, you have mostly redundant information. All the information reach the different senses in providing the similar information. The shape of an apple, for instance, is provided both from the touch, also from vision. So how can you disentangle the different roles of the different sensory modality? Well, what is a possible solution for you? Have you do you have any suggestion for me that I want to run a possible experiment? Quindi se voglio sapere come il ruolo delle differenti modalità sensoriali, come posso fare?
Ne blocco una.
Ne blocco una, quindi studio solo
esempio,
il singolo senso?
Sì, dico che magari una alla volta, quindi poi studiando, cioè facendo una sottrazione, fare le varie situazioni, si riesce a vedere il contributo.
Allora, questa può essere una possibilità. Posso guardare la singola modalità sensoriale e poi cerco di capire il contributo. Il problema è che se io blocco la singola modalità sensoriale, non so veramente quale possa essere l'effetto quando tutte e due le modalità sensoriali entrano in gioco e se ci possa essere una reale influenza. Se le considero solo le due bloccate, non posso capire come possa avvenire il confronto. Questo è una possibilità, è chiaro, posso anche vedere, se ne blocco una, posso anche vedere cosa accade se tutte e due poi vengono impiegate. È chiaro che però in quella situazione, se ne blocco una, crea una situazione che diciamo è poco ecologica, crea una sorta di anomalia. E quando una modalità viene bloccata ci troviamo in una situazione di deprivazione sensoriale che può facilitare l'utilizzo di un senso.
Non so, magari facendo leva su delle illusioni percettive, quindi ad esempio nel caso di prima della presentazione del parlato con un movimento delle labbra coerente, si potrebbe provare il paradigma, adesso non mi ricordo come si chiama, però è il classico, no? del presentare una sillabazione diversa oppure uguale con dei suoni diversi.
Allora, this is one of the possible solutions. You use illusory perceptual phenomena, like how those illusory perceptual phenomena works. They are really conflict situation in which you put in conflict the different information. This is a possible way for studying how the different senses influence each other and the possible role. For instance, one of the effects that was just mentioned, is the McGurk effect. Okay, let me see if it works.
Ba 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 ba.
So
ba 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 ba.
The McGurk effect.
Ba ba ba.
Okay, thanks.
Ba ba.
Thank you. Thank you. In this kind of effect, you have someone that is moving the lips in a congruent or incongruent way with the sound you can hear. And in this specific case, you have always ba sounds, but they move the lips in a different way. Did you have a different perception in a different condition? So sometimes you can perceive va, for instance, or ga, or a possible combination. This is a way for showing a possible conflict. I can show you another possible way, which is even more amazing, if you want.
We rely on our eyes to guide ourselves around the world. It's all about coordinating our sense of vision with our bodies. But we're not even born with the basics. Babies have to learn where things are and what they have to do to grab them. And until they get it right, it can be a frustrating process. As adults, we take it all for granted. But in Chicago, psychologist Hubert Dolezal has devised a bizarre way to test how well our brains can adjust when everything we've spent years learning is turned on its head. He's built a set of goggles that flip the world upside down.
Hello, Hubert.
Hubert has been wearing his goggles non-stop for 2 weeks now. We're going to see how well our human guinea pig learns to cope after just a few hours.
That is so...
At first, it's totally disorientating. But at the end of the day, we're going to see whether it's possible to ride a bike with the goggles on.
I'm right here. Now, here we go. Let's shake hands.
First, it's back to Hubert's flat. And to start with, a simple task that any child could do.
It's so weird. My hand is just, disembodied. Is it?
It's back to square one.
I'm going to have a new admiration for babies now when you see them playing and trying to stack them. There's a great gaping fridge there, and I can't work out how to get my hand in.
Everything that normally happens automatically is now a real struggle. You have to think about what you're seeing, work out where things are, and then move your hand. It makes you realise how even the simplest movements depend on accurate guidance from our eyes.
Where is my hand?
At first, anyone entering this strange upside-down world has the hand-eye coordination of a toddler. But after a few hours, there are signs of improvement. Hubert seems to have no trouble, but then he spent weeks wearing the glasses. And to begin with, he was just as bad.
Oops. Whoops. I just realized that I'm going to drink with my forehead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
As the days went by, Hubert adapted brilliantly. His brain started to make sense of this topsy-turvy world, making the right movements automatically without having to think about it.
Oh.
After 8 hours, it's time for our volunteer to attempt riding the bike.
Yoo-hoo!
It takes a monumental effort of concentration not to fall off, but he's just about hanging on.
Quindi qui abbiamo visto come le informazioni visive possono avere un forte impatto sulla nostra rappresentazione del mondo esterno, ci permettono di vedere il mondo in una condizione in cui il mondo è rovesciato, chiaramente la nostra capacità di integrare le informazioni sensori-motorie è fortemente messa in difficoltà e quindi dobbiamo riabituarci, riadattarci. Qui ci mostra quindi l'importanza, per esempio, dell'informazione visiva sulle altre informazioni vestibolari, propriocettive, ma si mostra anche che il nostro cervello ha una forte capacità di adattamento. So we can adapt to this possible conflict. This example show that the visual information can be really important in affecting our representation of the world. When the world is upside down, it's difficult for us to integrate different sensory motor information, but also it shows that our brain, after a while of training, can be adapt to this new situation. So we can really, in a sense, readapt to the possible conflict and accept and overcome this possible conflict. I have other kind of example, but I want to just to skip for time constraint. And I want just to show that there are other possible example of illusion in which auditory cues are really important. Auditory cues are often ignored. If you start to touch a surface like this, you can feel how smooth or rough is the table. But sometimes you ignore the fact that you are using also auditory cues for, in a sense, rating the smoothness or roughness of the table. Quindi quando state toccando una superficie, qualsiasi superficie di qualsiasi tipo, voi la state toccando attraverso il vostro senso del tatto, ma è possibile che anche le informazioni uditive giochino un ruolo nel darvi un'idea di quanto sia liscia o ruvida questa superficie, delle caratteristiche. Questo, per esempio, è stato dimostrato in quella che viene chiamata parchment skin illusion. Nella parchment skin illusion veniva chiesto alle persone semplicemente di fregarsi le mani di fronte ad un microfono. Il suono che veniva raccolto da questo microfono poteva essere il suono veridico, mandato alle cuffie, oppure venivano amplificate o ridotte determinate frequenze. Bene, alle persone veniva chiesto quanto senti umido, quanto senti secca, quanto valuti secche le tue mani. Ecco, questa valutazione cambiava in funzione del suono che veniva percepito. So in the parchment skin illusion, you have this illusion in which you ask people to rub their hands in front of the microphone, and they are asked to in a sense, evaluate the dryness, for instance, or even the roughness of their ends. And they show that when you just manipulate some frequencies, you amplify or attenuate the frequencies, people start to think that their ends are drier or wetter just by manipulating the sounds. Because obviously, if you rub your hands in front of, nothing is really changing. You don't put any water in between the ends. So there is really, truly a multisensory illusion. There are other illusions that I'll skip just to go to the final points. By the way, it takes me more time for my presentation because I try to do both in Italian and English. So thanks for your patience. I hope you are still with me and you can follow. But what can we learn from this multisensory conflict phenomena? Quindi il tempo che ho dedicato alla presentazione è andato probabilmente un po' oltre, vi chiedo di portare pazienza, ho cercato di farla in italiano e in inglese, questo ovviamente ha diciamo preso più tempo, ma detto questo, spero che mi possiate ancora seguire. Io vorrei arrivare almeno a un paio di conclusioni. La prima conclusione è: cosa possiamo imparare dal creare situazioni che sono conflittuali? E qui arriviamo alla risposta alla domanda fatta da Arianna in precedenza. C'è una classifica tra le modalità sensoriali. In realtà, come dicevo prima, la classifica è relativa, nel senso che dipende dal tipo di compito e del dominio che stai considerando. So, we can learn that there is no really better sensory modality than the other. In absolute terms, there might be some modalities that are better than the other in relative terms. It depends on the domain that you are considering. Perception relies more upon the sense that typically provides the more accurate information in a task, specific task. So if you are in a task in which you are required to localize or to use spatial information, usually vision provide the more reliable information than the other senses. So when you have to localize information, you rely more on the visual information. The classical example is the ventriloquism illusion, in which you have a person that is making a puppet speaking, and you perceive this illusion that is really the puppet that is speaking. But in that case, there is really a sort of dominant of visual information, the movement of the lips, the puppet, and the good ventriloquist is the one that don't move his or her own lips. And the sound are produced from a different source. So there is a sort of attraction, a spatial attraction. Visual information attract the auditory information, okay, toward the source. So you have the impression that the sound is really coming from the puppet. Quindi il nostro cervello, come dicevo prima, dipende dal contesto che consideriamo. Se consideriamo il dominio spaziale, la possibilità di localizzare gli stimoli, abbiamo una maggiore acuità per quello che riguarda la vista rispetto all'udito. Non che l'udito sia così male, ma ci sono alcune aree, per esempio dello spazio, in cui non riusciamo proprio a localizzare perfettamente, soprattutto in una posizione laterale, la posizione da cui vengono presentati gli stimoli, mentre dal punto di vista visivo la vista fornisce delle informazioni molto più adeguate. Tuttavia, però, se consideriamo il dominio temporale, ecco che l'udito fornisce delle informazioni molto più affidabili. E in quel caso, per esempio, se prendiamo in considerazione la durata di stimoli, è stato dimostrato che se io presento stimoli che hanno durata differente, per esempio uno stimolo uditivo un po' più lungo di uno stimolo visivo, che vengono presentati contestualmente, diciamo, ecco, la durata dello stimolo visivo in qualche maniera viene valutata a seconda della durata dello stimolo uditivo, ma non viceversa. cioè lo stimolo uditivo influenza lo stimolo visivo, ma non viceversa. So at the end, if you ask people about duration of possible stimuli, and you have stimuli that last differently, so for instance, you have an auditory stimuli that lasts longer than a visual stimulus, usually the duration of auditory stimuli is going to affect the perceived duration of the visual stimulus. And what else? Finally, there is not actual dominance. We are not really completely dominated by one senses. Our sensory modalities are weighted by our brain. Sometimes we weight more the visual information, sometimes we weight more the auditory information. And even in specific domain, even if visual information is better in the spatial domain, if we start to blur a bit the visual information, we see that the auditory information is increasing its role in comparison with the visual information. Il nostro cervello pesa le modalità sensoriali, dà un diverso peso in funzione dei compiti, ma anche in funzione delle informazioni che vengono veicolate. Se in un compito spaziale io in qualche maniera rendo meno visibile lo stimolo visivo, ecco che noto come l'informazione uditiva acquista maggiore importanza e quindi posso vedere che di nuovo c'è una sorta, non è una competizione che è sempre vinta da una modalità sensoriale, ma la relazione tra le diverse modalità cambia in funzione dei contesti e delle situazioni. Grazie per la vostra attenzione. Sì.
Microfono.
So. We have heard about different senses, but we have not, and the interaction between the different senses, but we have not heard of something about that we have also more sensors, so, and the interaction between the different sensors. So for example, we have two ears and we have the interaction between left and right ear and so on. Could you also tell a little bit about the interaction between the different sensors that is not only related to acoustics, but also to visual and other things too, I think?
Yes, indeed. If I got it correctly, is that we don't have really just one source of information. We have different source of information. In the case of ears, we have receptors that are coming from the left and right ears, and those information can provide us important cues and can put in relation with the other senses. For instance, there are a typical attentional field or line of research that use dichotic listening. So you present two verbal stimuli presented to the different ears, and you see how the attention can be focused toward one or the other. And this is being shown just in Broadbent used to study it in the 60s just in an auditory way, but there are also evidence that this kind of information or attentional focusing can be influenced by visual information and can affect the way in which we are able to extract information from the different receptors. Quindi una informazione importante che diceva Roland è: qui abbiamo visto come i vari sensi interagiscono tra loro, ma è anche vero che bisogna tenere presente che noi riceviamo informazioni da diverse fonti. Per esempio, nel caso del sistema uditivo abbiamo un orecchio destro e un orecchio sinistro che ci aiutano a elaborare tutte le informazioni che arrivano dal mondo circostante. Dicevo che c'è una linea di ricerca che prende in considerazione l'ascolto dicotico. Questo ascolto dicotico è un ascolto che prevede che ci sia una diversa messaggi che vengono presentati all'orecchio destro e all'orecchio sinistro, per esempio del palato, e si vede come funziona l'attenzione. In quel caso è stato studiato per lo più in maniera uditiva, ma si è visto anche quando si aggiungono informazioni visive, questo meccanismo possa essere influenzato e possa in qualche maniera migliorare la nostra capacità di discriminare le informazioni che arrivano attraverso le diverse vie. Prego. Penso che there is another possible question. Poi... Sì.
You explained very well the relationship between the hearing and the vision. You can say something about the smells?
Yeah, indeed, I'm studying smell, the point of the smell, and try to be, and then if you want, we can talk a bit later. The point of the smell is the way in which you present smells, and we have an olfactometer for presenting it, and the smell can really affect the way in which you perceive visual stimuli. We have a study in which we show how the eye movements, for instance, can be affected by the smells and attention to food or non-food related stimuli. And also there is a link between auditory information and smells. There are some auditory information that are more linked to some smell than other, but I talk about them tomorrow. So I'll have more time for discussing about it.
Qui tanto è giusto così.
Molto velocemente. Capisco che il tema è decisamente complesso e già lo studio dell'interazione sensoriale è complesso, ma l'interazione fra le percezioni che abbiamo visto cambia in funzione dell'età, perché questo potrebbe condizionare la maniera in cui noi progettiamo i nostri ambienti.
Cerco di essere molto sintetico perché il tempo stringe e ho preso tempo nel mio intervento, ma la questione è che ci sono dei periodi nella nostra vita in cui c'è maggiore possibilità di produrre degli effetti a lungo termine, per esempio quando siamo molto piccoli, ma questo sistema cambia in funzione dell'età, perché i sensi poi diminuiscono la loro capacità di elaborare le informazioni, quindi anche l'interazione può variare e i pesi possono cambiare. Ok?
Grazie. Ci siamo. Grazie Massimiliano Zampini. Devo dire che comunque al termine della serie di incontri poi c'è un momento di confronto, quindi eventualmente annotatevi cose importanti di cui volete parlare. Sì? Ok. Sì, prepariamo il secondo incontro di questa prima giornata. Sì, con Roland Sotek, benvenuto. Mettiamo in pausa.
No, chi c'è adesso? Sotek.
Meglio lascia stare. Ta. E tra poco partiamo perché siamo molto in ritardo, quindi se c'è qualcuno che deve entrare e sente la mia voce dall'interno, accomodiamoci. Roland, ci sei? Siete pronti, tecnici, amici?
Non si vede al momento là. Ok.
Prima partiamo con lo streaming dove si vede.
Ok.
Benissimo, partiamo. È il secondo incontro di questa prima giornata con Roland Sotek, Head Acoustics in Chalmers University. Chalmers. Il modello di percezione Sotek.
Sì.
Prego.
Grazie. Yes, I was asked to talk in English, so if there are some questions in Italian, I will also answer then in Italian if it's possible. So the title I've chosen is Psychoacoustic, the Future is Now. And it's about my hearing model, and especially about psychoacoustic parameters like loudness, tonality, roughness, fluctuation strength, and there will be other parameters in the future. So I don't know who has heard about psychoacoustics. So why do we need psychoacoustics? What do you think about that? Is there someone here who has some knowledge about that? So what is psychoacoustics? Why do we need that? Yeah?
See, one.
But there are not many. Maybe, okay.
I think there are fields as well, but I think psychoacoustics is just, with a focus on the perception side of the whole auditory system, going away from the bare physics, numbers, and looking into the actual perception, which makes it difficult because a lot of other things come in as well, right?
Yeah, that's right. In technical acoustics, we're looking to levels, spectra, and so on. But we are focusing on the recipient. The focus is on human perception. And my lecture in Sweden is also called, not psychoacoustics, it's called Human Response to Sound and Vibration. So there we have also the interaction between the senses, so vibration and sound, for example. But I'm talking only about sound today. So the question I asked was, why do we need psychoacoustics? And here we see one example. And this is something to convince people that they don't knowing about psychoacoustics. So we have here two files, two sounds. We see on the top pictures the sound signals. So I think here we have the sound signals. And in the lower part, we see so-called third octave spectra, and also the overall level. Sometimes people are looking only for overall level, but other times they are looking also for the distribution of the levels over frequency, and then with a certain resolution, logarithmic resolution, third octave spectra, and we see that for the two sounds here. We see that the amplitudes, the sound pressures are almost the same. Here we have more changes over time maybe, but if you look to the spectra, they're almost the same. And now I will play the two sounds, and we have different sensations. I hope so. So for the first sound on the left side, so that's somehow annoying. I stopped it here because it's a continuous sound. And now I'm playing the second sound. So the first sound was an electrical motor, and the second was a part of a Mozart concert. And here we have a clear difference in our sensation when we are listening to these sounds. And if someone tells me, okay, the overall level, or A-weighted overall level, or even the third octave spectra are the important things, I say, no, that's not. What are the differences here if the third octave spectra are the same and the overall level is the same between the two sounds? Do you have an idea? What could be the difference? Why do we have a different experience here? It's a very simple thing. So what people are looking, if you are calculating the level, is an overall value. But if you look into the spectra, we have an average spectrum. But there's more. We have time structure. So that is that the signal is changing over time. And if you calculate some average values like average spectra or overall level, we have only a limited view on that what is happening. And with the time structure, the spectrum and the time structure, everything is important. And if you miss one of these, it's like the if you have multiple senses. If you miss something, we miss some. We have not the complete picture of that what's going on. And on the right side, I have put only the third octave level together, that you can see that we have almost identical levels and third octave spectra, but with different sensations with these sounds. And especially if we are going to sound quality, that means we would like to evaluate the sound. How do we perceive the sound? And this is a very important task in product design, but it's not only important in product design, it's also important in room acoustics, it's important in musical acoustics. So I was invited to give a lecture last week at the University of Detmold in Germany. It's directions trained, and I showed how to do jury testing and how to evaluate psychoacoustic parameters and to collate that together. And this sound quality evaluation is a very important task because people don't want to have disturbing sounds. And this is very often a challenge. We have some disturbing sounds, like tonal sounds. I think tonal sounds should be known for everybody what a tonal sound is. But we have also other sound patterns, so spectrotemporal patterns. That means we have changes in frequency and time. So-called modulated signals that cause sensations of roughness and fluctuation. I will play some examples in the next minute. So we may have changes in the amplitude of a sound, but we may have also changes in the frequency of a sound. So the frequency of a sound is going up and down, and this causes these spectrotemporal noise patterns. And this has nothing to do with level, and this will not change that much the spectrum. So the time structure is here also very important. And another aspect that we have to consider is that sound quality can also affect the health and well-being of people. So that's not only related to the overall level. So you may have a sound that has a much lower level than another sound, but it may cause more health issues than the sound with the higher level. And this may cause, for example, sleep disturbance or cardiovascular effects and cognitive impairment. So I developed a model that was started around 1990, but it was improved during the last years. And my aim was to explain and describe with one model many psychoacoustic effects and parameters. And recently, so recently means during the last 5 to 7 years, there were these parameters were standardized in ECMA standard. This is an international standard, and the name of the standard is 418-2. And we started there with tonality. Then that was before in another standard, but in 2020 it was coming into the new standard. Then roughness was added and loudness. And recently, that means last month, also fluctuation strength was published in the most recent version of this standard. And these standards can be downloaded for free. In other standards, you have to pay for these standards, but these standards can be downloaded. And there are also now some open source implementations available also for calculating these parameters. So let's come to this, what I promised. What are these modulated sounds? How do they sound? And I have here a very simple example of a 1 kilohertz tone that is modulated with respect to the amplitude. So the amplitude is going up and down over time with a certain rate. And the change is maybe for every second. That means we have a modulation rate of 1 hertz, and it sounds like this. So we can follow that the level is going up and down, and this causes fluctuation strength. And if we change the speed, how often we have these changes, so the modulation rate, then we have, for example, with 4 hertz, the maximum of the perceived fluctuation strength. And this is very often used for alerting sounds. And if we look to speech signals, so the envelope of speech signals has also these 4 hertz, and this is for our communication very important. And so we are attracted by these sounds, but these are also very annoying. So normally we don't want to have these sounds, only in some cases where it's really necessary. So if we then increase this modulation rate again to 70 hertz, say, then we have another psychoacoustic parameter that's called roughness. So we can't follow any longer this changes in the amplitude that makes a constant sensation. And this is also a very annoying sound. So this is about the time structure and the parameters fluctuation, strength, and roughness. I will not go in this morning due to time reasons into the details of fluctuation and roughness. I will focus on tonality and on loudness. So when we are performing evaluations, we are not considering only one parameter, for example. So we are looking how rough a sound is, how fluctuating a sound is, how loud it is, and so on. So especially in very complex sound scenarios like soundscape applications, we have many sources, and we have to find a way to evaluate this. And very often people are using linear combinations of some of these psychoacoustic parameters, like maximum, average, or percentile values. And but individual events may also cause a bad or good perception. Mainly, most of the cases we have a more annoying factor if we have high tonal individual events, for example. And there we have to consider how often they occur, what the magnitude and the frequency, what the magnitude and the duration of these components is. So especially individual tonal events, if they have a certain duration, if they're very short, they're maybe not affecting the perceived quality that much. But if you have sounds that have a duration of a second or so, even if you have a very long observation interval, that means we have a sound that is presented for a minute or so, a tonal event may cause just an effect if it has 1 second. And that has to be considered. And if we look for some statistical values like percentile values, they do not consider that in the right way. So I'm going now to talk about tonality and loudness, and I will have also some application examples at the end with respect to some interesting topics that are high topics. So that's about drone sounds, unmanned aircraft systems, and heat pump systems. Yes.
Does the frequency affect the perception of roughness? Like in the previous
what do you
slide?
mean with frequency? Do you mean the modulation rate?
No,
the absolute frequency.
The absolute frequency.
You have a tone, or you have a broadband noise or narrowband noise at a certain frequency,
Yes.
certain frequency range.
Yes, if you play a higher frequency, like the one you showed, was 1,000 hertz. I believe.
1,000 hertz that was in the main cases was studied around 1 kilohertz. But if you go to higher frequencies, so there is not they can't see a huge effect at higher frequencies. There's the effect if you're going to lower frequencies, and there's also an effect at which modulation rate the maximum roughness is perceived. So I've given you here the example because of time reasons for 70 hertz. This is for frequencies for 1 kilohertz and above. You have the most sensation of roughness at a set modulation of 7 hertz. If you go to lower frequencies, there you may have also at 30 hertz, at very low frequencies, the maximum of the perceived roughness.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So if you talk about tonality, then we have first to understand what is tonality and how is it perceived. So I have here four examples. And I'm asking also my students when I'm doing this in the lectures, which sound is more tonal. So the first example is very simple. So I play the first sound. Can you make it a little bit louder, please? Okay. And the second sound. So here it's very clear. So which is the most tonal sound? The first one. Okay. And here we have the first sound was a sinusoid and the second was a noise sound. And here we have to consider dependency on the signal type. So that's really easy in that case. But now we are mixing sound components. So the next example. Did you change the volume in between? So I play it again. Okay, I play it again. But next it will become very loud then, the next third example. Okay, so here it's also clear what it is. I think it's, we have in the first example not a pure sinusoid, we have a sinusoid plus noise. And in the second example, we have the same sinusoid, but with more background noise. And here we have to consider the signal-to-noise ratio. So the signal-to-noise ratio is influencing, so the tonal component is partially masked by the background noise. So if you talk to the experts, so this is masked, what we call it. And so we have reduced tonal component due to the background noise. The next example, okay, I think this is okay now. So this is the same sound as it was played before. And now, so here we have the same signal-to-noise ratio, but different overall level. And this was studied also for a while, that at the beginning people said only the shape of the spectrum is important for tonality, but now there's a consensus that the overall level also is influencing the overall tonality. So we have here the effect on level, the dependency on level. And the last example I have here is the following. So here we have the same signal-to-noise ratio, the same level, but different frequencies. So we have here to consider that the sounds with different frequencies also cause different loudness. So a tone at lower frequencies is perceived less loud than a tone with a higher frequency or a mid-frequency range, for example. And here we have the dependency on frequency. So these are the main factors that influence the perception of tonality. And tonality has a huge practical relevance in many applications. So in automotive, aircraft, IT, environment acoustics, also music, room acoustics, everywhere, and especially e-mobility in the automotive area increases the importance of this effect, because there we have more tonal sounds due to the electric motor. We have also to deal with higher frequencies because we have higher rotational speed, and we have less masking due to that we have no combustion engine. That causes also mechanical background noise, and it does not mask any longer these tonal components. And what we like to have is an automatic quantification of the different dependencies, signal to noise ratio, level, frequency, and so on. So I will give you now a short introduction how my model is dealing with tonality and also with loudness, and without showing you the mess. So you can find the mess in the literature, or you can find it in the standard. If you would like to implement it, you have to be an expert in signal processing. But for me, it's important that people understand the basic principles of the methods, that you understand what's the benefit of this model and what's maybe also the advantage compared to other models that are existing. And here we start with this, always with the sound pressure. We have a recording, and the recording can also be binaural, and we will hear a little bit more about binaural listening and binaural processing later. But we have two channels that were recorded, like the ones that I've presented before. I did not talk about that. We have left ear, right ear, and we have measured here wind turbine sound, for example. That sounds like this. You clearly detect a low, mid or low frequency tonal component that is almost constant over time. So we have here the time signal. You can see that here. The mouse pointers there also. And then we are going into the frequency domain. So there are different steps in between. So we have to consider the filtering function of the outer ear. So if a sound wave is coming into your ear canal, so we have reflection, diffraction at the head, and this is done by some filtering in the beginning, and then we're coming into the inner ear, and then what we have there for the next main step is the so-called specific loudness. And we see here the frequency axis here, and here we have the time axis, and the level or the value of the specific loudness are coded by colors. So the white and yellow colors are meaning these values are very high. And if you look here around 700 Hertz, this is the influence of this tonal component that we have heard before. So we have also here more signal components. We have here also a structure where we can see we have here higher specific loudness, here lower, here higher. So we have also some fluctuation there. There are many other effects in this sound, but the tonal component is one very dominant component here. And if you would have a pure tone, a sinusoid that is constant over time, then we would see here only a constant value over time. There would be no changes, but we have still a distribution over the frequency. And here at this frequency axis, I could also put the numbers of the critical bands. So the incoming signal is filtered by bandpass filters. And then we have the representation of the critical bands with some overlapping therein. But we have always, even for a pure tone that would be represented in the physical, as a physical spectrum with a pure line or so, we will have a distribution here over the specific loudness. The sum of the specific loudness would lead to the overall loudness for a certain time instance. And if you have a constant signal here, you would see the constant loudness over time. So this is the basic principle how we can deal with such a picture. Here is the most information. We could reduce this information summing over the critical bands. Then we would have an overall loudness over time. And from that, we can get a single value, a number that people normally would like to have at the end to evaluate the sound with respect to loudness. If you do that for frequencies, with different frequencies here, we have here a frequency axis from 100 Hertz to 10 kilohertz. We can then calculate the loudness for different tonal components, pure tones, at different levels. And what I've shown here on the right side is only one result of the algorithm that's related to the so-called equal loudness level contours. And these equal loudness level contours show us what is the level needed to generate sound with a certain overall loudness. If we have 1 kilohertz, 20 dB, then we have here a certain loudness. And if we would compare this to a tone with another frequency, here at 100 hertz, for example, we need much more level in order to generate the same sensation of loudness. We need there more than 40 dB for 20 dB at 1 kilohertz, and so on. So, and one benefit of my model is that I can simulate this so-called equal loudness level contours much better than the other standardized loudness models. So the next step is, and this is due to better nonlinearity in my model. I have not the time to explain that in detail, but there's another effect that I would like to show you now. That is, with my model, you can separate the tonal component and the background noise. So this is a very important step. There's a question?
Yes, only the question about the model and the graph to the right. Is it based only on pure tone or yes?
This here, we have here we have here. I don't know. I think you can see that there is a dashed line here, a black line. This is the ISO 226 220 from 2023, where I was the project leader, where it's described how should the equal loudness level contours look like. And the blue curve is the calculated result using my hearing model, and this is almost on top of this curve. There's only a very small difference, 1.5 dB in average for all the data that is presented here. But this is for pure tones. So in the standard, these only pure tones are covered, and so there is no other standard that is related to narrowband noises or so. But this is also a special case. Normally you don't need, I would say, this standard, but people would like to have such things for pure tones. If you would like to know what the loudness of any sound is, you should use a good loudness model. And then you can predict the loudness with the loudness model. So the equal loudness level contours is only one application example of a loudness model.
Another question is, how are these curves parallel? Why, sorry?
They are
Why?
not parallel. They are not parallel.
Yeah.
So there are differences here. They are not parallel. So even at very low frequencies and at higher levels, they are coming to more together. They are not parallel. Here, for example, at 100 hertz, we have between 20 phone and 40 phone, maybe it's 20 dB, and here it's about only 15 dB or something. So they're coming narrow. So because of the presentation size here, it's very hard to see, but there is a difference. They are not parallel. And therefore, it's also not good only to use A weighting. So the A weighting is related to the 40 phone curve. And this is only one shape that you are using there. And this is also very smooth, the A weighting. So even for that case, A weighting is not enough. So let's go to the next step. So that is what I said. One important step in the model, and this is cannot be found in the other models, is that I can separate the tonal content from the noise content. And you see the result here. And this is this tonal loudness. That is the loudness, what we see here, that is related to the tonal component only. So if you look here, you have an idea that this part is related to a tonal component. There's a strong band that is here with a high value of specific loudness. And the algorithm provides us now this result, and this is related to the loudness only of the tonal component. And this is not the end of the algorithm. There's also at the end a consideration of the signal-to-noise ratio, and this means here in that case the ratio of the loudness of the background noise and of the tonal loudness and of the loudness of the background sound. And this changes here in that case only a little bit. You'll see here, if I'm considering this here, you see a small effect, but not that much. But if the background noise has a higher value, you would see a stronger effect here. So it's considered, but for this case, this effect is not that important. And I would like now to go to the next, if there are no questions about that, and at the end, we get the tonality here, taking the maximum of the specific tonality as a function of time. There's no summing at the moment for this tonality algorithm. If you have multiple tonal components, then I use at the moment the tonal loudness only for the multiple tonal components. There's another question. Can you give him the microphone, please?
Yeah, I was wondering if, like the examples you showed were about sinusoidal tones, right? Like 1 kHz.
One moment. The equal loudness level controls.
The next one.
This one. Yeah.
So I was wondering, what if you use the different fundamental frequencies which have a lot more harmonics or less harmonics? Like, what if you compare, I don't know, a trombone to a string instrument which have a really different spectral disposition of harmonics?
No, here for this standard ISO 226, only pure tones are considered. Only pure tones are considered with different levels and with different frequencies. And you compare always to 1 kilohertz. And the procedure is you calculate for 1 kilohertz the loudness, and then you adjust the level of the other sounds that the algorithm shows at the end the same value as it has shown for the 1 kilohertz. And the value of the loudness is not important here in that case. You can use this for any model, even if the models are showing different results. So my model, by the way, is using the data in the literature much more in detail without oversimplifying something. So my model provides lower values of the loudness compared to the other ISO models. But using my model for different applications, you can see that it matches very well with the results. But if people say it in the past, there's this rule of thumb. 10 dB change in the level will lead to double loudness or half loudness in which direction you're looking for, and this is not correct. So it's depending on the level, the overall level, and if you look for the, for me, most interesting level range from 40 to 80 dB, you have as median values maybe 13 dB that is needed and not 10 dB, and this makes a huge difference. So that leads to difference of a factor of 2 or 3 if you are going to very high levels. So if you're applying the other models for environmental sounds, you get maybe 50 sounds, and if you're comparing that to the loudness of a 1 kilohertz tone with 40 dB, you have difficulty to say that's 40 times as loud as that it is. So you have to do your own experiment. I did this, and with my model, there the factor is 2 times lower or 3 times lower, depending on the level range that is considered. But this is matching better the results of the jury test results. Other question? Okay.
Yes, very interesting. So it's very clear it's dealing with tones, pure tones at different frequencies, and stationary, right? Stationary signals. How about the masking signal? Is that dealing with broadband noise only, or narrowband, different maskers at different frequencies? Does it incorporate...
For this example?
Yes,
in
general
no
about the
noise.
model. Yeah, I mean the... Okay, that's clear. So
for the ISO algorithm, you are using really pure tones, and for that case, there is also no need for separate tonal sounds and background noise. Then the overall loudness is the same as the tonal loudness, so that's very easy to compare. So, and the other algorithms don't have the disadvantage that they don't have the separation algorithm. But I will show you another example where this separation of tonal and background noise and a new combination of these tonal and background noise loudness lead to much better results compared to the other algorithms. I will show that later.
okay, thank you.
Okay, but this is very interesting. And what about this increase in the model across between 1 kilohertz and 2 kilohertz?
Increase? What do you mean here? I don't know.
It is not linear, but it is okay.
Here, this.
Yes.
So here's 1 kilohertz and here's 2 kilohertz, and this shape also what it is. So this is the shape that you get also from measurements. So, but you are thinking, what is the effect in the ear where it's coming from? So of course you have some principles there. You have the resonance in the ear that is changing also there something. So you know that you have a lambda a quarter resonance there, and then you get much more level. And so you need here less level if you are going to higher frequencies in order to have the same perceived loudness.
I would have expected this at in between 2 and 3.
Here, yeah.
A
So
little bit.
when here the curve is going down, that means that the signal is higher due to the amplification of the resonances in the ear. So this is this range here around. This is a broader range. If you are talking about this detail here, then this is due to the amplification of our ear canal, and so this is the reason why we don't need that much level in order to perceive the same loudness. Okay, so I see I have to shorten my presentation, so there's so many questions, but that's very interesting. Don't hesitate to ask me. So I like this interactivity, and I like this kind of
yes, it is
presentations.
expected that the questions are useful to understand
Yeah.
more of what he says, but it is not a problem for you if you have to shorten your presentation, because otherwise people that do not understand, and it is.
Thank you very much for that. So, I'm happy for that. So I would like now to show another algorithm that is called prominence ratio or specific prominence ratio, that is very often used in industry and is also standardized. And this looks for the third octave spectra, or here in that case even for the critical band resolution, and looks where do I have a spectral component that is dominant. So you see here in the frequency range around 700 hertz, there is a peak, and around this frequency, the critical band level is calculated, and compared to the critical band level to the left and the right, the average of those, in order to see, is there a spectral peak? So, and the only thing that is considered is the level difference in this critical band compared to the average of the left and the right band. So if we are looking only into differences, this will mean that if we change the overall level, the difference will remain the same. So we have one component, we have some noise to the left and the right, and we are calculating the levels. And if we look for the level difference with this procedure, and we change the overall level, the difference will remain the same. Only that the values are higher or lower, but the difference will be the same. And this difference is then used normally to describe tonality. And this has a drawback. This is a drawback here for this algorithm. So I will play first the original wind turbine sound. So, and I'll explain what's showing the second picture that looks the same. I reduced the level by 20 dB. So it's not a fault here that it shows the same. So it's the principle of the algorithm that does not cover the overall level, or use the overall level, only the difference in the neighboring bands. So you can hear the sound. There's a small amount of tonality, but it's much softer with respect to the tonal loudness or the tonality. And if I play it now with plus 20 dB, okay, it's too loud here. So, but the effect is clear. The tonality is changed by the overall level, and this is not considered by the specific prominence ratio. And if we use the hero model tonality, we see this difference. So we have the original sound with this tonality here. This is with the lower level, and this is with the higher level. So we have a correlation that corresponds to our perception. Okay, now I will summarize this. We have tonal sounds that are perceived very prominently and can lead to high annoyance. And if we compare different methods that are standardized, we have different results. All the methods consider the signal-to-noise ratio, like the prominence ratio we have there. If you change the background noise, it will also has an effect on that. But there are this prominence ratio, there are other algorithms, I did not mention that up to now, tone-to-noise ratio, or there's a DIN algorithm also, and my hearing model tonality. And if you go to the other dependencies on level, there's only my model that is using this information. And the dependency on frequency is partly also covered by the other algorithms. But if you look into the standards, the other algorithms are not applicable to non-stationary sounds. even if you use that, so we are using it, we segment the signal into blocks, we analyze the prominence ratio, and we go to the next block. We can do that, but the algorithms in the standard are described in the way that are not usable for non-stationary sounds. And so the previous tonality standards lead to unsatisfactory results because psychoacoustics is not taken at least fully into account, and they are not applicable to non-stationary sounds.
How can you be sure of that? So have you investigated with questionnaires or apart from the algorithm, have you investigated this in with perceptive tests? That is, so people.
So this, for example, dependency on level, you don't find a part in the algorithm that is considering that it's not there in the algorithm. So I could do there are so many tests that I would like to do. So this test doesn't make sense because there's no part in the algorithm, the signal processing that is taking that into account, for example. And this, as I mentioned, we are doing this also. If you trust in the prominence ratio, for example, you can try to apply it, but in the algorithm, in the standards, there's given, you should not, it's not written, you should not use, but it's only intended to be used for stationary sounds. And stationary sounds, according to my opinion, are not existing in real life. So we have always, these are only synthetic sounds that we could generate, but if you are doing, if you record sounds, we have always in stationary, time-varying sounds. Yeah. And there's another parameter, so there's tonal annoyance, that is different from tonality. If we look for tonality, it's strongly related or correlated to the tonal loudness, so the loudness of the tonal components. But loudness is not the same as annoyance. So if we go to higher frequencies, so for example, 2 kilohertz, 4 kilohertz, 10 kilohertz, so if we have the same loudness at that point for tonal sound, people are more annoyed by that. So I did also, I would like to answer a question. Now, there I did experiments, so where we asked people to adjust the sound that is equally loud. Okay, we find then the equal loudness level contours. And I asked people also to adjust a sound referred to reference sound that they perceive the same annoyance. And then you have a much higher reduction at higher frequencies. So you can find that the higher frequency tonal components are more annoying, and you can then use this, and I did this also with different levels of the sound, and it had the same effect there. So you can weight the tonality in the way that the higher frequencies cause higher annoyance, so with a weighting function. So that is really easy done, and so it's not at the moment in the standard, but it's published, and it will be maybe, if I have time to put it in the next standard, I will do that then. And I have another option here that is not mentioned in the standard, but is using the data that is in the standard. So we have here on the right side the specific tonality for all-wheel drive electric SUV. And here's a special representation. It's not frequency that is used here. So it's a rotational device. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Mechanical engineering should know that. These are orders orders. We have here pretty high orders. So we have a rotational speed, and if the rotational speed is changing, also the frequency components are changing, and the order analysis makes that as a flat function. So in order to better understand where this phenomena is coming from. But the frequency resolution in the hearing model is normally based on the critical bandwidth. So you have a tonality in a critical band, and you know the value, and you're fine with that if you're interested in the tonality itself. If you're not interested in the frequency of this tonal component. But if you would like to change your product, you are interested, but it's the frequency. So the frequency is available in the algorithm. So it's also described in the standard, and I can use this information in an additional plot. So here I'm using only the resolution of the critical band. So at low frequencies, the critical bands have a bandwidth of 100 hertz, and you don't see, is it the frequency, is it 90, is it 70 or whatever, you don't see that there. You see only that there's a tonality. But I can use this information and put this in another plot, and then you see on the left side, with another axis, this based on the frequency itself that is available, I can plot then here also the same tonality values that you see here, but you know now where the frequency is, and this gives you the opportunity to say, okay, this tonality is due to the 94th order, and this here is due to the 187th order. So this gives more insight into the physics, into the causes, which part of the product is generating these tonal components. So, what's another question? Okay.
The question, sorry. But if I understood well, your model of tonality does not take into account the annoyance due to high frequency tonality. Is it correct? So
no,
only detects tonality.
So the model calculates the tonality. And the tonality is defined as the tonal loudness, considering also the background noise. So that's the tonality. And if I would like to calculate the tonal annoyance with my model, it's available, but it's not in the standard at the moment. I have a weighting function that is known. I published it at Internoise 2019 in Madrid. And you can apply this, and you get also the annoyance of the tonal component.
This is very important, in my opinion, for the I don't know, the experiments.
Annoyance. I can talk about annoyance. Annoyance is not a psychoacoustic parameter. It depends on so many things. So if you would like to evaluate annoyance, you have to look for maybe also for fluctuation strength, for roughness. You have to look for also for loudness itself. So there are so many, and there you have also to consider the context. So where are you listening to the sound? What is the environment where you are? And this may affect, of course, the annoyance. But we can also, I did not talk about sharpness, so this is the next step. There is no good sharpness model at the moment. And I have an improved model, but I'm still working with a PhD at the University of Salford in order to improve this model. But this will need a while in order to come to a validated model that can also then be standardized. But sharpness of tonal components is also affected by the frequency of the tonal component. So if you would like to develop a new metric of annoyance of pure tones, one could also think about combining the sharpness and the tonality in a metric in order to get the annoyance. But with this weighting function, I found a way that is easier to apply without considering another psychoacoustic parameter. So, but tonal annoyance, tonal loudness are different things. Tonal loudness is the basis, is also the basis for the overloudness. I will show you in the next step. And annoyance is easily done by weighting the tonal loudness at the end. Parameters for annoyance, for general annoyance, for general annoyance. But if you are talking about annoyance of tonal sounds, there is no other parameter that you could think about that is known at the moment that would cover the higher annoyance of higher tonal components except sharpness. So there is no roughness, there is no fluctuation strength for a pure tone. So I don't see another parameter that can be tonality and sharpness. Yeah. I would say yes. If you are talking about pure tones, if we are talking about multiple tonal components, then we have to consider dissonance, other things. Then also roughness is coming into the game, and also maybe if their tonal components are very close to each other, we have fluctuation. I have some examples later. So for pure tones only, we have these two parameters. Yes.
Sorry, may I just come back a little bit to the model, just to have a clearer picture. So, okay, the tone is a tone, and we can see that the tonality depends on level, signal-to-noise ratio, and other aspects. When okay, the level can be the level of the tone, of course, the target tone. For the signal-to-noise ratio, the examples were related to broadband, maskers. So I was wondering, does your model incorporate different maskers, different competing sounds, such as narrowband noises or other tones, if you think it makes sense.
Yeah.
And the second aspect is related to the, let's say, modeled individual, which is behind average individual, let's say, listener, which is behind the model. So the duration of the stimuli are there in the order of seconds or minutes. So is some sort of adaptation or fatigue incorporated into that? Do you think it would make sense? And also the, let's say, individual abilities, how possible changes into individual auditory abilities, for example, dynamic range, loudness, perception, may affect that. And again, if you think it makes sense to have those kind of more, let's say, individualized models. Thank you.
Many questions. So I will try to answer them one by first the first question. So you talked about the shape of the background noise. So broadband or narrowband. So and the duration. So these two topics. I did experiments, and I used also experiments from the literature. They were using very short signals, like 2 seconds to 5 seconds. And so if you have constant sounds, you don't need that long. The fatigue in listening tests should not be lasting more than maybe 15, 20 minutes, maximum 30 minutes. So people are going to be tired after a short while. And you're also using techniques in order to test this. What is the best way to do such listening tests? But this is beyond this topic. We have other days in order to discuss this. The effect in the model, if you have a broadband model noise, then that would not affect the tonal sounds completely. It's only a part of the background noise that's affecting. So if you have very narrow band sound components, this will be covered. But for the broadband noise, there will be a limit, maybe covering 2 or 3 critical bandwidths in order that will have an effect on the masking of these tonal components. So I could talk more about that, but the other point was sometimes I'm using longer durations when I'm looking for the effect of single events. And there was a paper published in Japan, in Chiba, Internoise 2023, where I used masking background noise, 40 seconds from soundscape recordings, and I inserted several single events in order to evaluate the effect of the events. And there was a clear effect on single events with a certain short duration, even if this is not covered by the so-called percentile value, how often a value is exceeded in a certain amount of time of the complete duration of the signal. So, but in order to answer the full set of questions we have to discuss this more in detail later. So I hope I could answer at least some of your questions now. Are there other questions? Okay. So I have 50 minutes. We started later, but maybe I cannot show the nice examples at the end. If you would like to see them, we can make it in the break or so later. But I don't want to extend the day too much. Okay, so we will see. So now we're coming to the hearing model loudness, and here's also the question: why do we need just another loudness model? Of course, I could say, okay, I have a model, I can calculate with this model all the psychoacoustic parameters. Okay, I'm calculating also a new loudness model, but why do we need a new standard and so on? So I have just shown you one example why it's really interesting to have this in order to use the most information that is available in order to have a model that uses all the information that is provided in the literature, or almost, at least that I know. I could better match the most recent equal loudness level contours. That's a huge benefit, I think, even if it is a special case only related to pure tones. And the much better point, for my opinion, is that it considers better the tonal sounds. And I will explain this in a historical review here. So because the assumptions from the beginning of the loudness studies in the last century, they were oversimplified. And you may know that the critical bands are bandpass filters or bandpass signals or related to bandpass signals where the intensity is calculated in each of these critical bands. So this was used by Stevenson, this was also used by Zwicker, and they said what is important is the intensity, the level within one of these critical bands,
it doesn't matter how the shape within the critical band is. If you have a narrow band noise, you have a certain level, and or if you tone, doesn't matter. But this was oversimplified. But this was used then also in the ISO, Zwicker, and Moore, Glasberg, Schrittlacher loudness models. And there were just, I think in the 70s, more than 50 years ago, Zwicker showed also that it has an influence, that the tone is perceived much louder than a narrow band noise and so on. But it was not used to correct the standards. It was not used there. But this was also only a result. So, and I did also some experiments in 2010, and other people used tests also that show that a critical band with noise and an equally loud tone, that means the narrow band sound, the bandwidth is one critical band and the tone, and they are perceived at the same loudness. They do not have the same sound pressure level. And the equally loud tone may have a sound pressure level that is around 7 dB lower. And 7 dB is a lot. If people are looking for enhancements to reduce the dB there and the dB there, so 7 dB is a lot. And that means also at the same SPL, the tone is perceived significantly louder than the critical bandwidth noise. So I think this is some important information you should understand. If you have questions, please ask me now. I can repeat it with other words, or maybe Ariana can explain it with her words. That's clear. Yeah. So ISO 532, maybe Zwicker, Moore, Glasberg, Schlittlacher, underestimates the loudness of pure tones compared to noise.
Only the question is, Roland, but the noise, the critical bandwidth noise, okay, what kind of noise exactly?
I will explain it now, coming now to one of these experiments. So there are different publications that I made where I compared all the experiments of other people, but I have one example, but it shows the same tendency as the other experiments. I will show that. So, and with my model, you can get a higher accuracy of overall loudness. So, and here we have the experiment of Horst Rennis Verhey. Maybe some of you know Professor Verhey. He does a lot of nice papers in JASA and is also editor there. So what we are comparing is a tone with a frequency of 1.5 kilohertz. That was done mainly by Horst here, but with a level of 50 dB. So one frequency, one level. And the noise signal is Gaussian noise centered around this same frequency, so in the same frequency range, with varying bandwidth filtered, but with very steep slopes. So that's the only. So one could do also one could also use lower slopes there. That will also change then the results. But this is what they used. But what Zwicker did was not this kind of noise. But here this is one of the experiments. So then they determined the point of subjective equality with an iterative 2AFC procedure with 10 subjects. And what we see here is the mean value in the center here, the symbol, and they have the standard deviations. So they adjust the two signals, and at the end, in an iterative procedure, the reference signal was fixed and the one signal was changed. And at the end, they get then this at the same loudness. We get level differences. So what is shown here is the level of noise minus the level of tone. So that means if you have a very small bandwidth, the mean value is the same, so we have no change. So that means that a very narrow band signal is considered to be a sinusoid or something like that. But if you go now to here in that range, we have the critical bandwidth at 1.5 kilohertz. It's here in this range. We have here 6 dB, but it goes up maybe up in the standard deviation if you consider that to 7 dB and here, maybe a little bit low. But there's a strong effect and significant effect that this is perceived only at the same loudness if you increase the level of the narrowband noise. And now I have plotted the results of the algorithms and I was using the algorithms. Huh? I have used here the ISO 532 with different single values. So at the end, one can discuss what is the right single value. So the value that is exceeding 5% of the time, or an energy equivalent level. So at the moment, we don't consider these values. They're also very small here to read. For me, it's really difficult to read, but we have here also the ISO 532.3. This is from Moore, Glasberg, Schlittlacher. But what we can see here is that all the symbols are lying here in the range almost below 0 dB. That means an opposite effect. That means we have to change. We have to reduce the level of the narrow band noise in order to go to come to the same perceived loudness. So this is not that what I would like to see, but it's going always in the wrong direction. Maybe there's some small here in that case, maybe it's close to 0, but in average it's maybe at -2 or something like that. So, and if you apply my model, then you get the green symbols here. So they are almost lying very close to the mean value, but they're also within the standard deviation. And you can do that with many other tests that I've found. And I did this also in the Dager paper in English. You can also read that. So you will find that is a huge benefit of that. So to conclude this, several previously published experimental studies shows positive level difference between a subcritical bandwidth noise and equally loud tone. That means we have plus 7 dB or so, 5 dB plus for the critical bandwidth noise compared to equally loud tone. And this is not shown by the ISO standards. They're underestimating the loudness of pure tones. And based on the formula here, so I'm using a nonlinear combination of the tonal loudness and the loudness of the background noise. And the background noise is weighted with a factor less than 1, so that it's reduced. And so that the tonal loudness is more important with respect to the background noise, but it's not a linear combination, it's a nonlinear combination. So I don't want to bother you with this formula here. But the idea should be clear that I have a combination of these two components of the loudness. And I would like to conclude also with my vision that I have with respect to psychoacoustics, to make psychoacoustics better understandable, not with very complex algorithms. So there we have experts in signal processing to understand and implement them. But I would like to have an understanding that if you have a parameter, with the value of the parameter, you know exactly, is it important for me or isn't it important for me? And if you look for the tonality, we have here small values, 0.1, that's barely perceptible, 0.3, easily perceptible, and 1 tonality units, HMS is here in model of Zotek, strongly perceptible. Everything that's above is not something you would like to have. Even 1 is a high value that you normally don't want to have, except when you're looking for musical sounds. So they have tonal sounds, they have melodies, that's another topic. The magnitude of perception should be also the same for the other parameters, but to give an idea what 1 tonality unit means, this corresponds to a tonal loudness of 1 sound. That means it's like an 1 kilohertz tone or 40 dB. And go to roughness, we have another unit, but here the scaling of the psychoacoustic parameter is the same, that you also know if you have a roughness of 0.5 is something significant. And if it is 0.1, you don't have to consider this. And I have reviewed many papers and research projects where people were looking for correlation with respect to roughness, and they had values of 0.2, 0.4, 0.02, 0.04, and 0.08, small values. There was no roughness, but they didn't listen to the sound. So I encourage you, listen to your sounds and understand what parameter is there. So we have to be trained in order to understand what is going on there in the sound. And if you apply if you are applying a sound without thinking about to use it, then you can come to good correlations. But the correlations are not because there is an important impact of this factor. It's more that there may be a loudness depending factor that shows this high correlation therein. And for fluctuation strengths, we have also the same, and same value means same magnitude of perception. What I would like to improve in the future is to use new experiments for determining JNDs of psychoacoustic parameters. And this is ongoing just at some universities, and I would like to encourage other universities to collaborate. And this is something I'm really interested in. We learn a lot, and we have a lot of advantages. So we make papers together, international papers. We present that at international congresses and conferences and so on. And I have contact with Giovanni Brambilla. We had on Tuesday? No, it was the day before I was here arriving, so it was on Thursday. So I'm traveling around the world. I don't know which day it is. So, but this we discussed this that to have also in Italy maybe a kind of national project. But I'm doing it for fun. And I can also provide some lectures. We can go more into detail also in psychoacoustics, also in jury testing, if you like. And then we will do tests. And really you learn by be trained and learning also this on the way. So my time is over, but yes. I didn't have presented examples. So, but maybe another time then here. So.
Thank you. Other questions? If you have one question, otherwise later. Okay.
I wanted to. Oh, thank you for your presentation. I wanted to ask about the psychoacoustic reason for this level difference between the noise and the pure tone, where the noise was found equal.
I don't know the reason why we are expecting or why we are evaluating tones in a different way than the background noise. So I have a model, but I can't prove that we have something similar in our brain that's going on there. So I have no capabilities to look there, and I don't have technologies in order to test this. So what I can do is I can look for experimental results and see how we can describe this in a better way. And I have an algorithm that separates the tonal component and the background noise by applying an autocorrelation analysis. And this is something that is also mentioned some of the literature that people think it could go on in the brain, that we have something like that. So this was my motivation. And my motivation at the moment is to describe the parameters or describe the effects in the best way I can do with signal processing. But I cannot prove that this is really the same algorithm that is going on in our brain. So that's I can explain you why some results are showing this way and so on, because I know the algorithms, but I can't tell you where you can find this processing step in our brain. So, for example, I'm sorry about that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a very good question. Yeah. So I was not.
You need a neurologist. I don't know. You need a neuroscientist.
Yes.
Audiologist.
Yes.
Just about a very, very, very simple way that can be, let's say, simplified, because you will have a cochlear processes. So you will have stimuli reaching the basilar membrane and the cochlea vibrating, and neural fibers reacting to the vibrations of the cochlea. So you will have also some mechanical aspects at the level of the basilar membrane fluctuating, different sensors activating on the transducers, which are in the cochlea, and a different number of nerve fibers responding to that, and different frequencies of the spiking nerves that bring the stimuli to the brain. So a very complex pathway that will lead to a higher loudness, which is maybe related to the higher recruitment of neural fibers, bringing the, let's say, the electric impulses to the brain. So very complex phenomena.
I can add something also related to that. I know how the processing is working, but I can't prove that this kind of algorithm is there. So, for example, I've developed also an algorithm that is providing a high resolution spectrum, and this is based on the excitation pattern on the basilar membrane. So all the different parts of the basilar membrane with all the fibers are excited, but you have always a spread of the information. You don't have something like FFT analysis where you see a peak at one location, but you have a certain shape of the auditory function. And in my PhD, I've described that this shape of the excitation pattern for sinusoid can be expressed almost in the same way. There's some variations maybe over the frequencies, but you have a certain function, a smearing function, and you can use a deconvolution algorithm in order to get back almost the physical spectrum. And if you combine all the information on the different nerve cells that you have, you can get a higher resolution analysis with respect to the spectrum, and you can get also their tonal, you can analyze that there is a tonal component and so on, but the processing, weighting the tonal sounds and the background noise, I think this is done in a very higher stage of the signal processing, and not at the basal membrane itself or direct. You have the information there, but the combination of all that what's going on should be at a higher stage of, and they are not expert what's going on there. So I'm sorry.
Passiamo, sì. Ecco, Simone Torresini, Università di Trento. Andiamo con l'archetto. Si sente, sì. Io direi, Arianna, se siete d'accordo, il dibattito che era previsto alle 12:30, tra le 12:30 e la 1, siccome ci sono state diverse domande, insomma, se volete facciamo il dibattito previsto il pomeriggio, lo usiamo per tutta la giornata, perché siamo in ritardo di una mezz'ora, insomma, quindi facciamo così. Sì, all'una bisogna abbandonare il teatro. Abbandonate il teatro. Pronti? Simone Torresin dell'Università di Trento, il modello circomplesso per comprendere la percezione sonora. Sì, no, va bene, fuori campo, voce fuori campo. Prego.
Grazie, and thanks. I will give my small talk in English, as we are lucky enough to have international guests. So I'm going to talk about circumplex in different contexts, mainly in the context of soundscapes, but not only. I I would like to start from why do we need a circumplex and why it was developed. The reason, oh, does it work? So the reason is that this was used and was developed in the context of soundscape research based on studies in psychology and environmental psychology, because the starting point was that most of the research in acoustics was trying to characterize the link between noise and negative outcomes, both perceptual or health outcomes. If we look at the definition of acoustic comfort, we can find from a few years ago, we find something like this, like a concept that can be characterized by absence of unwanted sound and opportunities for acoustic activities without annoying other people. And we recognize now that this definition is a kind of limiting. So I've always been working side by side with building physicists working in thermal comfort and visual comfort. And I was seeing something happening there, like pushing towards not only comfort as the absence of something, but really having something positive. And there was an abundance of literature on how to use thermal stimuli, how to use visual stimuli in the context of the built environment, concepts like thermal anesthesia or the quality of window view, but we were kind of missing this for acoustics in the design of buildings. I was finding something similar in the soundscape research, and I got intrigued by that because still when doing post-occupancy evaluation, we were basically always asking about the source of discomfort, annoyance, and how much we were annoyed and bothered by noise. And this was a weird way to ask people about their acoustic perception in buildings. Would be like inviting people at home for dinner and asking them, how much are you disgusted by the dinner I gave it to you? So it's not like the proper question to do it, to get information to design better dinners or better buildings. So starting from the very well-known definition of soundscape as the acoustic environment as perceived or experienced or understood by person or people in context, how can we characterize people's perception? So my background is in building engineering, so I was moving in between, very far from my background and towards reading works by psychologists. So I'm sorry with psychologists here if I might be inaccurate in certain aspects. First of all, I was reading about affective response that to me was quite similar in the end to emotion and mood. So I was reading about how can we characterize people emotional response were immersed in a sound environment. And I will present the work by Austin Axelson, but the fundamental theory behind is very general. How can we characterize affective states, so emotional states? And there was a debate back in the 80s about which are the dimensions underlying people's perception. In general, people affect emotion. So some of those were characterized a number of dimensions that were thought to be independent. So we can have a myriad of emotions and states, and these are quite independent one to the other. Or there were others supporting that they are not. And as Schlossberg proposed back in the 50s, emotion would be organized in a circular arrangement, which means that they can be represented only by a two bipolar, so a two-dimensional space of one related to pleasantness and unpleasantness, and one related to attention and rejection. But then the question was, can we really present and explain the many different states we have with just two dimensions? Because many are not really synonymous of pleasure, displeasure, or degree of arousal that was basically explaining the second dimension. And this was explained in the work by Russell, in which it was showing evidence from different tests, both presenting data from self-report in evaluating affects, emotional states, or in judgment data in which people were asked to judge different stimuli in relation to emotions. And what you can see is basically that in all these experiments, we could basically explain all the affective states as a composition of two main dimensions. One was more related to valence, to pleasure, and the other was more related to the activation or arousal. And all these states were meaningfully placed around this circular place. So this is basically the circumplex, what the circumplex is, and is explaining the fact that all affective states arise from two fundamental neurophysiological systems. One is related to how much we like or dislike something, and the other one is related to how much these activate us. So bringing this, and we will see that slowly, and here my engineering background comes back. We are trying to move perception to numbers. And this is tricky, of course. We try to see this, each emotion as a linear combination of these two dimensions. So for instance, being happy could be seen as being both pleasant and with a high arousal, while this content state would be like a combination of pleasant and low arousal. And we will see that this comes back in the circumplex model of soundscapes. So we have these two dimensions, but by rotating 45 degrees, we can have these two secondary axes, one related to excitement, depression, and another one related to distress and contentment. Of course, this was not explaining 100% of the variance in the affective data collected from experiments. There are further dimensions, and you can find many in the literature, but those were explaining a small proportion of variance in the data. So then Axelson trying to study a circumplex model applied to soundscapes. So explaining the basics dimension when listening to sound environment. What he did was taking 50 soundscape excerpts from outdoor urban spaces, 30 seconds in duration, from urban spaces in London and Stockholm, with a large variation of sound pressure level. He had 100 listeners, and each listener was judging only 5 out of 50 soundscape excerpts. And he started with 116 attributes that he derived from the aesthetic evaluation of pictures, of photographs, and then there was like a focus judgment among experts to adapt those attributes in the field of soundscape, of listening to sound, and those were in Swedish. And then participants had to listen to these soundscape excerpts and provide a rate from 0 to 100 in terms of how much what you are listening to is matching your soundscape perception. So those were the 116 attributes, ratings plotted after a principal component analysis. The basic idea would be that we cannot usually ask people 116 attributes, so it would be really nice to reduce them down to a few basic terms we use in a survey to assess how people perceive soundscape. And this is what PCA does. So he extracted 3 components explaining the first 68%, the second 25%, and the third, a small proportion, 7% of the variance in the data collected. And those were labeled pleasantness, eventfulness, and familiarity. The labeling is, of course, a more qualitative stage in which the researcher has to observe data. In this case was related to observing the attributes that had the highest loading in the first component. So we see here, for instance, that the one closer to the extreme, but this can be observed better in the loading tables, was related to pleasantness and comfort. So this is why we get then the one single label that was pleasant. And also observing the arrangement of attributes around this circle, we could notice that those were really meaningful. So basically, we can identify a pleasant area, then attributes describing vibrancy that can be can be interpreted as a soundscape that is both pleasant and eventful. If it's eventful but annoying, this generates something that is kind of chaotic. On the other side, we have something that is uneventful or pleasant, and this describes a calming soundscape. Or if it's annoying and uneventful, that would result monotonous. We also see that we have more in the center other attributes that are not well explained by these 2 components. He was also trying to link these 2 dimensions with something that could be measured, and in both cases, the type of sound categorized by researchers was an important aspect, and loudness, so the 10% loudness value. And it's interesting to see, to plot then back on this bidimensional space, the different sounds that we're listening to. And we see that usually heavy traffic sound was sounding chaotic, while here we have people voice, natural sounds. This is, of course, trying to simplifying. And here in the monotonous quadrant, we have more like could be light traffic noise. But we will see with the other campaigns we did that this is not always true. This is something that could be maybe sometimes true for a urban context, but of course not always. There are many studies trying to identify, again, the 2 dimensions in urban context, a urban outdoor context, and you see that different labels were given in different studies, but often then we can always relate those to a first dimension that is trying kind of pleasant, so valence related, and a second dimension that is more related to arousal or activation or eventfulness. And in the end, these 2 dimensions were included, and this rating scheme was included in the ISO standard on soundscapes, method A, that so far has been the one more broadly applied in soundscape studies. So what we do is usually collecting data on the 8 attributes that are derived from Accession study. And from these 8 rating scores, we are able to calculate a point in that bidimensional space in the 2 coordinates of pleasantness and eventfulness. In this way, we can visualize people perception in a moment in a space in terms of pleasantness and eventfulness. And here you see like the formula that's through trigonometric simplification allows us to get the 2 coordinates from the 8 attributes. This is extremely helpful for designers because it helps us to visualize soundscape perception and to set targets in urban planning intervention or to sound acoustic designs in general, and to compare in this bidimensional space if the target was met or not. Those are examples of plotting soundscape data when asking a group of people about their perception. And here we see that the distribution of data is often relevant because, of course, we cannot expect all. If we have like 50 people in a place, we can expect their perception to be quite different and spread. So with the distributional analysis, we can also get a sense of the tendency and any skewness. We can also compare by just visualizing data. In this case, each shape is the 15th percentile contour, so contours containing 50% of the points. Different features like different places or places or soundscapes in relation to acoustic or psychoacoustic thresholds. And we have also tools helping us, like in the case of Soundscapify, to analyze and visualize data easily. A recent development by the UCL Soundscape group was the development of soundscape perception indices, trying to, again, based on data plotted on the circumplex model, to compare a target soundscape distribution with a test distribution and basically compare distribution in a wanted soundscape against the soundscape we have or we are modeling. And with this distance metric, that is the SPI, we can see how far those two shapes are in a distributional, taking into account distributions. A question I was asking myself, this was part of my PhD. We know that soundscape from Schaffer until our days was mainly derived for study in outdoor urban spaces. Can we apply it indoors by just using access-on model? We know that there are differences between indoor and outdoor soundscapes and acoustic environments. We have indoors a combination of indoor and outdoor sources. We have a reverberant sound field. We can have it also outside, but is definitely more relevant in indoor spaces. We are performing a greater variety of tasks. We are not just transitioning or relaxing, but we can be studying, working, doing different types of work that have different acoustic needs. We spend most of our time indoors, and we often have not much availability for control. We cannot just move to another park or to another street. We are just working and living in our buildings. So I was trying to redesign another listening test, kind of similar to the one Access-on did, but this time combining indoor generated and outdoor sources. And from this combination, having 20 acoustic conditions. This was done in the acoustic lab at UCL. My focus was on residential buildings, daily activities. So this was a kind of living room. Of course, we were asking participants a bit of abstraction, so inviting them to imagine being in a real living room with sound spatialized in order to get them the sense of having outdoor sounds coming from this fake window and indoor sources. Different attributes, this case, more related to the perception of sounds indoors. 97 attributes derived from literature on the perception of sounds indoors or the visual description of indoor spaces, but also focus groups or the text analysis of reviews in booking or hotels staying, like to get all the attributes used usually in a normal language by people. There was also the description of these 20 conditions from acoustic and psychoacoustical point of view, and again, principal component analysis of the ratings derived by ratings of people, of participants when judging these 20 scenarios. So I derived 3 components. The first one related to comfort, the second one mainly related to content, and the third one again related to familiarity, where the labeling was again related to the attributes, loading more strongly with these different dimensions. And then through linear mixed models, I was trying to relate these perceptual dimensions to the acoustic and psychoacoustic parameters, also sound categories for the different scenarios, for the 20 scenarios. So we can see again that when including sound